This film will outline the following timeline of the Sydenham Metro Upgrade SMU project. The current progress of the project to date and the works needed this year to be completed to enable the commissioning event. And a day-by-day account of the commissioning event, whereby the existing Bankstown Line and the XPT Maintenance Centre will be temporarily diverted through platforms 3 and 4, decommissioning platforms 1 and 2 of train services. This allows final construction of the new Sydenham Station concourse and platforms. During the past year, the primary focus of the project has been the installation of the new rail systems to support the diversion of trains from platforms 1 and 2 to platforms 3 and 4. These works include the installation of Sydney Trains Combined Services Route, CSR, underline crossings, pit and pipe buried cable route, galvanised steel troughing cable route, overhead wire footings and structures, rail track crossovers and one turnout, new cable installed, new location cases and alterations inside the Sydenham relay room. The rail systems work will continue as critical path for the remainder of 2019, with the following rail systems work remaining prior to December: civil embankment works, track, overhead wiring and signal and control systems. The temporary shutdown will be delivered under 2 different shutdown arrangements. The first part of the shutdown will commence at 2000 hours on the 24th of December 2019 and finish at 1000 hours on Saturday the 28th of December. This will mean no booked train services on all 6 tracks at Sydenham Junction. The shutdown will have a full high voltage and 1500 volt electrical isolation of all 6 tracks. The second part of the shutdown at 1000 hours on the 28th of December will see SMU hand back to Sydney Trains the Illawarra main lines to allow passenger services to resume on the eastern suburbs and Illawarra lines, stopping at platforms 5 and 6. SMU will continue to work on the Illawarra locals and the Bankstown lines, which will be under possession and isolated until 0200 hours on Monday the 6th of January 2020. Over the first 2 days, SMU will carry out associated works on all 6 tracks, with the outcome of the first shutdown to have the new signalling West Trace technology fully commissioned on the Illawarra mains lines, upon handback at 1000 hours on the 28th of December. Electrical high voltage and 1500 volt isolations will be in place from 2200 hours on Christmas Eve. Once isolation is granted, key high rail access ramps will be installed at Way Street, Fraser Park, Bolton Street and Bedwin Road. Signal Resources will commence signal changeovers and associated field equipment testing of the Sydenham relay room and the location cabinets. A separate team of signalling electrical and mechanical resources will commence booking out and disconnection of protection and redundant signalling equipment such as point rodding and trackside equipment. The removal of existing overhead wiring portal structures which cross all 6 tracks will take place, and a new overhead wiring portal structure crossing the Illawarra locals and the Bankstown lines will be installed. 8 redundant structures on the Bankstown lines will be removed, as well as 420 metres of existing OHW wire through platforms 1 and 2. A new overhead wire will be run across the 735 crossover at the city side of Sydenham Station that was installed in late 2018. At the countryside of Sydenham Station, approximately 180 metres of plain line track on the up-down Bankstown and up Illawarra local, including 2 crossovers and 1 turnout, will be removed. This work area will be split into 3 work groups. The first work group will remove the materials to Way Street, using high rail excavators and trailers. The second group will remove track along the Bankstown line using front-end loaders transporting the materials to the SMU compound. The third work group will deconstruct and remove a catch point located within the throat of the XPT and be stockpiled in the XPT compound by front-end loaders. Following the removal of the existing track, excavation at the country end of the station, along with underline crossing and associated local trenching to support signal services, will be carried out using spoil trains 1 and 2. Trains will leave at the end of possession full of spoil. Excavations and capping installation along the Bankstown lines will be carried out by high-rail dump trucks to Fraser Park. And excavated capping material from the throat of the XPT being transported to and from the XPT compound. On Day 3, Boxing Day, Signal Resources will continue signal changeovers and associated field equipment testing of the Sydenham relay room and the location cabinets. Signalling teams will also concentrate on carrying out limited local signal equipment changeovers and testing on the Illawarra local and Bankstown lines. At the countryside of the station, the excavation will be completed with the spoil trains, followed by installation of capping and bottom ballast using the 3rd engineering train. Bottom ballast will be reloaded using the train at 2 local stockpile sites, St Peters and Way Street. Following the completion of the capping and ballast installation along the Bankstown lines, the realignment of approximately 300 metres of existing dual track into its new position will take place. Part of the existing track will be cut and removed to facilitate the installation of 801 turnout. Once this section of track has been removed, 300 metres of existing dual track will be cut and slewed using excavators into its final alignment. Turnouts that have been pre-assembled at Merrickville will be transported to the bottom ballast zone and will be installed by the aid of PEMLEM machines. Track constructions along the Bankstown line will be undertaken from country to city sequentially. Installation of a catch point via the XPT depot will also be undertaken, including top ballasting of the catch point using high-rail dump trucks. On Day 4, it's all about SMU's Signalling Commissioning Manager getting ready to commission the West Trace signalling technology on the Illawarra main lines, with design integrity testing (DIT) being undertaken to prove the system operates as per design. Turnout installation will commence close to the countryside of Sydenham Station, followed by the construction of 200 metres of plain line track which will connect together the recently realigned Bankstown lines. The sleepers will be transported from both Fraser Park and the old Sydney Trains Geotechnical Depot. Following the track construction, engineering train number 4 will then be used to install the top ballast within this area. Working concurrently, top ballasting along the Bankstown lines using high-rail dump trucks from Fraser Park will take place. Following this, in-house track resurfacing machines will access the site and start tamping the down Bankstown line and goods line. This will allow the signalling team to run new signal and communication cables that support the newly installed track. Signalling Resources will also prepare the track at the city side of the station in readiness for the track team to remove the redundant turnouts. On Day 5, 2 redundant crossovers will be removed, replaced with plain line track and the 735 points crossover rear line. Track removal and formation grading will take place. Work will cease on the down Illawarra local on Day 5 once the possession is handed back on the Illawarra mains. As there is one track separation between the live line and the up Illawarra local, works will then continue including the removal of redundant crossovers, grading the formation and installation of new plain line track. Concurrently, tamping of the up Bankstown line up to the canal underbridge will be carried out. A second track resurfacing machine will tamp the up Illawarra local XPT throat, the remainder of the goods line connection and the remainder of the up Bankstown from the station to the canal underbridge. Signalling DIT testing will continue in the early hours of the morning, which will involve simulated train testing on the mains with diesel locomotives. This is the final activity before booking the signalling back into service. Whilst all plant is fully operational on the Illawarra locals and Bankstown lines, SMU's worksite protection team will be preparing to hand back the shutdown of the Illawarra main lines. This will include handing back any associated electrical high voltage and 1500 volt permits and setting up appropriate delineation to protect our workers when the Illawarra mains reopen. SMU will then commence removal of worksite protection, and complete booking in the new infrastructure and setting up appropriate signalling bridging authorities for the concurrent possession. At the start of Day 6 on the city side of the station, a TWA will be taken to facilitate track construction, top ballasting and track resurfacing of the down Illawarra local. Once the TWA is handed back, track resurfacing will be completed on the up Illawarra local. Post-tamping, rail welders and track crews will carry out re-railing and adjustment welds on the Bankstown Line, welding of rail joints in the newly installed turnouts and adjustment welding on the city side of the station. The signals team will commence setting the newly installed turnouts to work, bonding the new tracks, certifying signals and connection of track circuits on the up and down Illawarra locals. Design integrity testing will occur on the Illawarra mains over 2 nights between midnight and 4 a.m. to allow for the certification of the signal routes to allow the XPT trains to access and egress the XPT maintenance facility. The overhead wiring teams will return and install the remaining structures, realign the existing overhead wire along the Bankstown and Illawarra local lines to the new track alignment. The overhead wiring team will also run the 3 new crossover catenary and contact wires on the newly installed turnouts. On Day 8, the overhead wiring teams will now commence moving their efforts to OHW registrations on the Illawarra locals and Bankstown lines, which includes measuring the wire alignment relative to track and install all bonding and section insulators arrangements. The signals team will also continue signal equipment setting to work, bonding of the new installed tracks, certification of new signals and connection of track circuits. Correspondence testing will be ongoing, working in and around the OHW registration works. XPT services will operate in and out of Service Road 4 of their maintenance centre on the 2nd and 3rd of January between windows 0530 until 0930 and 1530 until 1830. This will require the Illawarra local possession to be shortened to the station, limiting both OHW and signal works during the days. This has been factored into our staging, and additional safe working measures will need to be in place for working within 500 metres of the possession limits. The revised safe working arrangements and the removal of the signalling bridging authority will commence in the early hours of the 2nd of January, in readiness for the XPT rolling stock. Our OHW teams will continue with their registrations through to the eve of Day 10, the 2nd of January, due to the locals now only being accessible during the night post-XPT movements. On Day 11, the 3rd of January, commencement of OHW pantograph checks to check the newly installed wires will allow for smooth running trains and electrical clearances. Redundant OHW footing removals will also be taking place. Sydney Trains inspections and commissioning of the OHW is programmed to be completed on the morning of the 4th of January 2020, whereby they will be able to cite QA documentation and visually inspect the OHW so the OHW system can be signed into operational use. The signalling team will continue with field correspondence and set to work tracks, points and signals to allow field certifications and readiness for the design integrity testing of the Illawarra locals and Bankstown Line. Design integrity testing will commence at the interface areas, Meeks Road, St Peters, Woolly Creek and Merrickville, where the newly installed signalling system connects with the existing signalling system. The final 2 days of the possession are for the completion of aspect testing. It also incorporates the aspects from the Illawarra locals to the Illawarra mains, which will occur during midnight to 4 a.m. The final hours of testing will incorporate the live locomotive testing to finalise design integrity testing and complete ATRIX testing. A test permit will be taken to carry out section proving of the OHW 1500 volt in advance of handing back the possession. At 0200 hours, the Sydenham Junction remodelling and commissioning of the new signalling system will be complete. Train services will now travel from the Bankstown Line onto platforms 3 and 4.